knowing what you know, if someone in college or a young professional came to you for advice on how they can build a successful career in real estate or in business, what would be kind of your best advice to them?
You really want to start to develop your innate understanding of what you're good at. And, a way to think about that is like, what would you do if you weren't even getting paid for it? The other thing is just learn every day. You need a combination of the three. It's what you know, what you do, and who you know.
Yeah.
And it's not any one of them. It's got to be all three of them.
The Inside Deal is proudly sponsored by the Weiser Center for Real Estate at the University of Michigan, a program focused on developing the next generation of leaders in real estate, infrastructure, and entrepreneurship. Through education, mentorship, and industry engagement, the Weiser Center is helping bridge the gap between the classroom and the real world of deals, investing, and innovation. We're grateful for their partnership and support in bringing these conversations to life. Peter, welcome to the Inside Deal.
Hey, glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. Born and raised in LA.
That's right.
Yes. What were you like as a kid?
Oh, geez, what was I like? I don't know. I just had a rolling series of interests. So I was just curious about a lot of different things, some sports, some music. God, I was into, I had some pet lizards and stuff like that. So, just like curious all the time. I just looking back at my childhood, I feel like every couple of years there was like another phase of something that I was interested in.
That's really cool. LA sports fan or?
You grew up in LA, you're a Lakers fan growing up. So yeah.
Good thing to be.
For sure. Yeah.
So you did a bunch of entrepreneurial type businesses as a kid.
Right.
That was in your blood.
Mm-hmm.
You graduated high school and went to BC.
Yep.
Talk to me about those years.
About Boston College. Boston College, it was a great experience. I wanted, when I was specifically searching out a contrast from where I grew up, and being in Boston College definitely delivered that. From where it is geographically, the people, and it was a great launching pad for the journey that eventually brought me to New York and everything that came after.
Any interest in real estate or any real estate experiences back then?
A little bit, none in college. I was, continued kind of more of the sales, the entrepreneurial type stuff. I was in a band in college. And so, as part of being in a band, you've got to hustle to get the gigs and, all that kind of stuff and figure out how to make it all work. There's a lot of little micro coordinations that actually go to, getting a gig and putting it on and, the teamwork that's involved in that. So it's really like running a little small business and it's fun. So not kind of one-to-one stuff that led to real estate, but I think all these life experiences end up compounding.
100%.
And then you can look back. They make a lot more sense looking back than they do at the present moment. So absolutely,
you take a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and you see none of what you achieved could have been possible without all of those little ingredients.
Totally, yeah.
The sum of the whole is what's the expression? The sum of the whole is greater than all the ingredients.
Yeah, and all the parts. Yeah,
exactly. So it's 1997. You graduate college.
Mm-hmm.
Off to the real world.
Yep.
Move back to LA for a couple months to figure things out.
That's right. Yeah. Just go home, touch the rock for a little bit. And then a friend of mine, had an apartment on Ridge in Rivington in the Lower East Side. And God, it was looking back on it, was one of the first renovated buildings there. It was a renovated old school. And they had a bed. They were not a bedroom. They just had a bed in a shared bedroom actually for $600. And they're like, "Hey, it's open. Come on. And let's get this going." And that's how I started.
I like that. It reminds me of something I told my parents when I graduated school. Like, what are you going to do now? And I was like, I'm going to move to New York. And they're like, "Well, what are you going to do there?" Like, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. That's the way it's got to go. Right.
Love it. So you have to figure it out. You're paying $600 a month.
Yep.
What was your first job in New York?
So, so when I got here, you didn't have a job. Whenever I get asked this question for advice and you're trying to find a job, someone was just asking me this the other day, they're moving, I think it's just so much easier to get a job if you already live there. It's not like, I'll move there when I have a job. It doesn't really work.
Go to where the opportunity is.
100%.
Network, go out at night, meet people, see what they're doing.
100%.
Be available to go interview the very next day if you met somebody.
Yeah, you just got to go, right? So I was hitting the ground actually, at that time, pre jobs on the internet and all that kind of stuff. I was just job interview out of the paper, out of the New York Times, job interview. I ended up finally getting a job as a glorified assistant for one of the institutional equity fund managers at U.S. Trust. So, adjacent to real estate, but it got me in the game. And I was kind of moving towards real estate the whole time, but that was the job I got, and you had to get on the boat somewhere. And immediately after that, I started taking night classes in the NYU real estate program. And shortly after that, I interviewed and got a job at Arthur Andersen. They had a real estate consulting group that was doing, this was during the CMBS boom, and they were doing all the diligence for the CMBS tapes that the investment bankers didn't want to do.
Yep.
So that was a pretty quick transition. I worked at the first job for, 3 or 4 months, did the NYU class. That got me the, kind of the street cred at least. And there was, they were hiring so much at that time. There was just a shortage of labor, and they were looking for people because the CMBS market was absolutely like exploding. And so anybody who wanted to come in and do that. And so I got that job, and that really kind of kicked off, the real estate career. It was a great foundation.
How did that happen? Were you actively searching for the opportunity? Or you just heard about it, or how did that happen? Yeah,
actually, a friend of mine who already worked there let me know that this group was hiring, and it was like the perfect scenario for me and kind of where I needed to go. I was an English major in college, so I didn't have some of the technical chops from an underwriting standpoint and kind of the technical real estate chops. I didn't have those coming out of college. No one does really, but so the job was great for that, for sure.
So you were there for long hours, a lot of technical work, a lot of traveling.
Yeah, I mean, the culture, the late night work culture's changed a little bit, but back in, at that time, it was almost like a badge of honor if you worked in a shop where you were working till 2 a.m. Multiple nights a week. It could include some weekends, and then it would get slow, but then that would come back. But what I did there is that you ended up doing the underwriting and the loan diligence for every property type all over the country. So getting flown around working on projects for, it could be a several month project or a couple week project. But, that kind of diversity, working with teams, you saw a lot, and then also from the, just the financial modeling standpoint, I got a lot of those chops. So, they ended up, everything that I got from there ended up, in certain ways helping me much later on in my career as well. So just like we were talking about the different ingredients, keeps on compounding. It's really so true. Yeah.
So this is what, 98, 99?
Yeah, this is right. Yeah. From 98, 99, just right up to 2000. Yeah.
So back to that time, the dot-com boom and bust eventually.
Dot-com boom is totally happening. And if you work in a job like that, eventually you burn out. Like you can only work those type hours. And that was kind of the funny place where a system where the better you did, the better worker you are, you got put on the harder projects, and you actually got more hours. So you kind of there was a real paradox about working at a place like that, because the better you were, the worse your work-life balance was,
right.
Work quality, because then they just put you on harder stuff, and you weren't necessarily getting paid that much more,
right?
So eventually I burned out, and I wanted to get back to sales. And this also, another friend of mine, there's an internet sales job that came on, or that was, that I became aware of, and I just jumped on it. And it was almost just to take a left turn and do something different for a little bit. And so that was, this was at the time when the CEO would come down and, some Fridays they'd say, okay, everybody on the floor is getting more stock options, and we're bringing in a keg, it was like a really wild time. It was an amazing time in New York. Like you had the Wall Street was blown up. You had the dot-com thing happening. You had this whole euphoria. This is, just right before 9/11. There was a very particular energy that I remember around that time.
I know that energy cold. My first job in New York, I was a day trader.
Yeah. Yes.
This was 2000.
It was booming like crazy, right?
And there were some guys in my fraternity at Michigan who had done really well, made a lot of money in, the couple years before. And then they hired a bunch of us to come work with them.
Right.
We missed it by a little bit, but
Yeah.
we were basically, it was a great intro job. We were like showing up in t-shirts and flip-flops and like basically playing video games for a living. But
Right.
it was a good kind of bridge between college and in the real world.
100%. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Money was flowing in. So, and that was hardcore phone sales.
Yep.
Where I was. So, yeah.
Once again, one of the ingredients of what you would eventually do.
Yes.
So great experience. You started to really get the real estate bug again.
Mm-hmm.
September 11th happened. Things kind of changed a little bit. Of the internet bubble popped.
Yeah. So So for me, it just happened right at that time. It was, but I had worked there for another, for 2 years, and it was time to I wanted to get back to real estate. And I decided, and I ended up getting a job at Marcus & Millichap. And then, as I told you before, I thought, with the Wall Street Journal ads and all the marketing and stuff that, this was a really established company in New York, and I'd be walking into this, kind of machine that was humming. And when I walked in the door there, I just assumed that. I was really kind of looking back on it. I should have done some more diligence there. But when I walked in the door, I think there was about 14 guys in the office, and not one of them. I think actually one of the 14 had made money in the past, previous 12 or 14 months. So it was really something that was just barely getting off the ground.
These are the days of the blue books, correct?
Yeah, the blue books, and no one knew what they were doing and all that kind of stuff. And I got there, and like 3 days later, I'm like, holy shit! Like, what did I just walk into? I'm like, this is either going to turn out great, or like this is the worst move I've ever made. So,
well, it turned out
it's a journey.
It turned out to be kind of a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. Like all things like that. There's two sides of the coin. So it took me a lot longer, I think, starting there to get the eventual team and the group and everything up and running. So the downside was you kind of had that uptake, but the upside was that because nothing was there, you could create it from scratch. And it had afforded me the opportunity to have a lot of influence over what that would look like, and what the team would look like, and how we would structure it, and so it was a really fascinating time from that standpoint.
So, what year did you go to Marcus?
So this was the end of 2001.
2001.
Right.
Okay, so you built a business there. You figured it out from scratch. You built a team. And then you talk about how kind of one of the first big breaks you had was the GFC.
Yeah. And I would say, leading up to it, there were about 5 or 6 of us that started working together, and we were starting to get some real traction. And we actually had great years, like I talked about, some of these things are just serendipity. We had great years in 2007, and then all the way through basically the first, half a year of 2008. And then when the GFC occurred, everything kind of shut down, but we had done well the previous 24 months, and that afforded us like some runway. I remember, just business advice you remember from people. And I remember hearing George Marcus talk about, the way he would run Marcus & Millichap. And he always said that the company always had 2 years of operating cash off to the side that they always kept there.
Yeah.
And when I heard him say that, I tried to adopt that mentality myself. So when we had the team, and we started doing well, I was always socking away money to be there in case the market dipped. And so when the GFC happened, I didn't, I personally, and then also as a team, we didn't have to retrench as much as I think, other people in the marketplace do. And so, and that's, when you look at where the real opportunities occur in the recessions.
Yep.
That's so it's interesting. And once you acknowledge that, it'll change your relationship with how you think of hard times or recessions in general, because they're really, that's where the opportunities are. And they're hard to go through, and they're scary, and you don't know what the future is going to look like. And you have to go through all that, kind of mental toughness. But that also forces you to bring out your creativity and how you're going to figure things out, and how you're going to do twice as much with with half the resources and things like that. And so the GFC and the aftermath, the next 3 years that came out of that really were a huge growth time for us.
One of the things that I always say when we started Imperium in January 2010, it's kind of similar to how you guys were operating the GFC. It's such an advantage to not have any bad deals going into a downtime like a recession, to be able to look at the playing field level and not having to spend all of your time looking, trying to save the deals that you have that are distressed.
Shoulder.
And being able to look, it's kind of like poker, like you're not on tilt, like you're able to, you're calmly able to assess the opportunities in the field. Same thing when you have the money stacked away and you're not looking for your next meal as a broker or anyone in the deal business, you're able to kind of see, okay, where's the opportunity, and really kind of, you use that to, we talked about it yesterday. You use that to kind of build teams, attract it. One of the things you talked about that I think is really interesting, especially from the broker's point of view, is you kind of saw that you could attract a lot of good talent who couldn't get jobs because no one was hiring, and you could hire them on an all commission basis, and you hired a lot of really talented people, but you created a team atmosphere, which is kind of unusual for the brokerage community, which is an eat what you kill and talk about money later. Can you kind of just talk about that?
So when looking back on what happened there was really the convergence of like 3 or 4 things that happened at the same time that gave rise to what we were, what we put together. And I think it's really interesting. And the first is, just the technology that was becoming available to everyone in the business world around that time. One was just cloud computing. So, putting everything in the cloud and being able to access it allowed for a type of collaboration that, we take it for granted today, but to be able to do that and work on different files and asynchronous and all this kind of stuff, that allowed, it was a big door opener in terms of leverage and, allowing basically a group of people to achieve much more than a group of individuals. So there was that. The other thing that we did is, at this point, I'd been in the brokerage industry many years, and I started looking around and noticing that one of the biggest breakdowns in time suck across the whole industry was where people had the money conversation. And by and large, the money conversation occurred after a deal was closed. And this, I just noticed it be a huge source of conflict. And a lot of people were operating under uncertainty, which was using up a bunch of their brain power when they were in the office. And when you talk to them privately, they're like, "Oh, I was up last night. This deal's going to close. I don't know how much I'm going to make. I got to go in there and make my case. And I don't think it's fair." Or some guy's trying to angle to make it more unfair. And so you had all this friction.
Sharp elbows.
Yeah, it's sharp elbows. And like, that's what, that's kind of what the industry is known for. And there was almost this pride of having the industry like that. But if you just think about like so much wasted time and energy and like it was a big roadblock of how people would work together, collaboration, even having relationships.
Yeah.
And, the other, at the time, there just weren't many groups I didn't know any groups that were doing this. And now it's a lot more commonplace in the industry. I know Marcus took our model and tried to adopt it across the whole country. But basically it was take that money conversation and put it at the front of the deal, put it right at the front door when someone was hired. So they knew what they were going to make generally. None of these agreements are going to be perfect, but our goal was that it wouldn't necessarily be perfect on any one deal. But if you looked at, what you were making over a 12 or 18 month period, and you look back over all the deals you participated in, that it would be 90 to 95% perfect. And as a result of participating on the team and working in that structure, you were doing 25 or 50% more than you could on your own and working less, and you had some security. So, without having that income security, and brokerage is a huge source of anxiety for brokers. So there's a big benefit to working on a team that is generating income along the way. And so that, so just putting the money conversation in the front and coming up with a simple structure with some caveats in it was a huge unlock, because now I could take that and then combine it with the technology that, in the cloud that we're able to collaborate. And that really gave rise to, being able to work together in a team environment in a much better way. So, at that time, still I was competing against brokers in the business that had been, operating in New York for 20 years, 25 years. And, I was struggling. I was moderately successful, but I wasn't anywhere as successful as I wanted to be. And I just said to myself, like, my one brain can't beat someone who's got 25 years of experience in their one brain. But if I have 10 brains around me, we'll definitely be able to have a competitive advantage. So there was that. And then also coming out of a recession, your ability to hire higher quality people is significantly better. And we definitely benefited from that. The type of people that joined the team coming out of that, that time period, they really just, there weren't other job options. So, in a better economy, you're competing against people who are getting great salary offers, and they're not going to come work for you for a commission only job. So the job quality or the candidate quality comes down the better the economy goes. And this is just a rule with any recession. So to have, the money conversation, the technology, and then the quality of hires, have those things all happen at the same time, not to mention that's when quantitative easing started. So then you had some interest rate policy that started to help and started to put some fire back in the market. So you had a convergence of several things occurring at the same time. The other thing that we started doing with technology is at that time, basically, putting everything into the cloud and using technologies like Salesforce and all this kind of stuff allowed us to amplify our marketing in ways that you previously kind of were like unheard of. So amplify the marketing, automate a lot of it, make it extremely customized. So now I'm wrapping together like 5 or 6 different things that are real game changers in the business world. And there were huge leverage multipliers for my time. So, from the period of 2008 to 2015, we went from a group of 6 to 8 people to, in 2015 or, into 2015, 16, we were like 55 people. So, wow. And that was all those things wrapped up allowed me to leverage my personal time, tenfold, 20-fold, and everybody else on the team. So, there are just, looking back, you can look at certain time periods where things come together in clusters, and you got to take advantage of them when they come.
Love that. So speaking of leveraging your personal time, there was a cold letter that you got from an unsuspecting source, an unsuspecting place that kind of changed your entire mindset. Oh yeah, on the brokerage business and the business in general. Yeah,
this is the craziest thing. So I was having such a terrible. I was making like so many cold calls and having moderate success, but that is a really, really hard way to do it. And I got this marketing letter from a guy named Darren Garman, and he was in Iowa, and he was sending, who knows, I got on one of his lists, but it was a marketing letter, and I ended up opening it. And the message was basically that if you're doing cold call outreach, you're doing this business in the hardest way possible, and you need to change your entire mindset. Instead of doing cold calls, you need to change your whole business and spend all your time finding out ways to get people to call you. And use other tools available to to make that happen. And if you spend your time there and then you're answering inbound calls, your results are going to be much, much better. And that core concept Okay. So when when you enter the business, I mean, especially, in our environment where we were, Marcus, it was make cold calls, 100 a day, 150 a day, make them. And I was watching guys come in and, some would think they could make them and they couldn't, and some would make them and they were bad at them, and they'd do it for 2 years and they'd fail. I mean, most of the people fail. And, and if you're really good, you have some moderate success, but you've got to figure out another way to make it happen, because cold calls are just not,
there's a shelf life.
There's a shelf life
of your ability to make mass quantities of cold calls.
Right. You just can't do it. So, we talk about little serendipitous events. So I don't know why I decided to read this letter this day, but that I read it. I'm like, you know what? This concept makes perfect sense and we need to incorporate it. And that was one of the initial triggers that sent me on this journey of kind of deciding that I was going to establish marketing and how we were marketing ourselves be like a real cornerstone in the business. And so I can look back to that and how that eventually led to, our online marketing, our paper marketing, our digital marketing, which eventually led to me starting the podcast. And, and then several years later, we started adding a social media aspect to it and, our Instagram and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we started our Instagram, our Instagram channel for the team and started having fun with it. And like about 9 months into it, we got $100 million portfolio listing from Instagram.
Wow.
So, it was more like just training my mind to be like, okay, what's the next most highly leveraged marketing vehicle available?
Right.
And, it was newsletters and it was emails, and we would customize emails. I think, I told you an example of like what you could do with Salesforce then is you could have a listing on a block and you could customize emails, several very targeted, really, really pertinent information just for the 30 owners that are, within a 2-block radius of that particular listing with real good information that they would need to know what it sold for, who bought it, how long it took to sell. And you wouldn't have to bombard them. You could just drip them little pieces of information and do it in an automated way. So then we got to the point where we may had, 50 listings going on at one time. And on each of the 50 listings, the 30 owners that were just, within a block or two of that listing were getting very customized, dripped little pieces of information that was different for each 50 listing. And we were able to get the technology such that, everyone was getting very individual information, but times 50 every week.
Right.
And so, we really, I was really big on trying to systemize the marketing, systemize the messaging, but also have it in a way that was authentic to our own voice, to my voice, which is a mix of you're pushing a little bit, but you're also, it's got to be relevant. You can't waste people's time. I like to be pretty direct and not, people, especially in New York, people know when you're bullshitting.
Yep.
And so it really has to be authentic and it has to have, you have to be delivering value.
Right.
You have to be delivering value, even if it's information. And if you do that over time, it'll come back.
So did that change? To be clear, you guys still canvassed and used, not you, maybe not you personally, because that wasn't the best use of your time, but you were using these systems that you put in place with the information that was customized, and using that as the tool to canvas, change your print and change the call, as opposed to just some random, hey, how you doing? I'm this new so-and-so broker interested in selling.
Totally. Yeah. So you could send in the marketing ahead of you. So this way, when you did make the cold calls, these weren't cold calls anymore. You were actually, you were turning every call into a warm call.
Right.
And some of those calls were coming back this way before you even started.
Yep.
So if I could take a guy who had worked in the business 2 years and then, put him on a seat on a train where he was going to start out every day with 3 or 4 emails and maybe 2 calls that were coming into him. That's a complete transformation from starting a day where you've got a desk and a phone. You're just starting from zero every day.
Right.
So every day, the members of our team started with warm leads coming into them, even if they didn't have years of experience. That's like a transformative experience.
Couldn't agree more.
Yep.
And look, I obviously started as a broker as well. And then we took that brokerage approach of canvassing to the principal side of the business. We were, that's how we found all of our deals, especially in the early stages. But what I like to say about canvassing, which you figured out for your team, it's not a sales call. You're not going to convince somebody to sell their property. What you're doing is you're trying to call them with information and get into an interesting conversation and putting information. Okay, this property just sold next to you for this price, and they're not going to be like, oh, this guy convinced me to sell like it's a stock. What you did is provide them the information, provide yourself as having the expertise, and got into a conversation that was providing value, that whenever it is that they actually wanted to sell, you're the guy that they're talking to.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
So you also you had a podcast going. What percentage of once you really got the systems flowing, what percentage of your deals were inbound and which percentage of your deals were from campus?
We're like, straight cold calls. I don't remember that off the top of my head. But we would track, we would track so many metrics about, we would track everything. But
so you started to buy some real estate both in New York and also outside of New York during this time.
Yeah. I think, if you were in the business, the rent regulated business all changed when the laws really kind of broke wide open in 1997. And that's when the industry really changed. And if you were following along in 2011, that was the first kind of canary in the coal mine, that the laws were now the pendulum was going to start swinging the other way. In 2011, the laws changed. They got worse for owners. In 2015, they got significantly worse. And at that time, it wasn't a secret where this was going. This train was coming back the other way and was coming back hard. And so right around that time in 2015, on a personal level, I was always buying a little bit here and there, along the way. And then I started buying outside of New York. And then, 4 years later, 2019 happens. Everybody knows the big rent regulation bill happened, which, essentially like put the business on ice. And it just wasn't a surprise. By the time 2019 came, it wasn't a surprise at all. And, it's very unfortunate, but that's why it started to diversify. So that diversification, and then also, it led into COVID, but
right.
People used to ask me, around that time, what had a bigger impact on the industry? Was it COVID or the 2019 laws? And by far away, it's the laws of 2019, because you're still feeling, COVID's come and gone. You are still feeling the effects of those laws today. So I had just known for, really since 2015, I had the idea is that, look, at some point in the future, we have to diversify this business. And I just decided to diversify the principal business.
So what I like about your story is all the opportunity, or a lot of the opportunity, has come both on the brokerage side and then the principal side, from downturns or from what is perceived from the outside, distress and hard times. So first it was the GFC and you guys creating your teams and your systems. So 2019 happens, the rent laws happened, the multifamily regulated business crashed. COVID is kind of the double whammy in 2020.
God, it really was.
Walk me through kind of your decision making. You rented a house in Florida to get out of the city, and that kind of led to a brand new professional.
Yeah. So we had started buying multifamily outside of the city in the Southeast, and I knew at some point I needed an office or something. I didn't know. I needed to be closer to that product, and I wanted to be for several reasons. We were raising money. I wanted to be more in an integrity position with our investors, to just be closer to it, operate it and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. I just knew this was something. It was just an idea in my head. And when COVID comes, we end up renting a house in Florida. New York shuts down, Florida's open. And I woke up one morning and I'm like, you know what? If we move here, this solves like several things at once. And I'm just going to accelerate moving to the principal side, which I thought was going to happen it was going to grow slow and steadily, naturally. And it was going to happen 5 or 6 years, because then the portfolio would be big enough. It would just kind of occur on its own. I'm like, you know what? This is, everyone at COVID time says COVID accelerated things that were already in place. I mean, it happened. Like I could see it very clearly. So accelerated that, took a step back from everything I was doing in New York. I sold all my over the next, 18 months, I sold everything that I had in New York, redeployed it, all around the country. And then just, went, pedal to the metal on growing everything that we have at MFP Capital now.
Incredible story. What did you just resign from Marcus and Millichap, or did you just tell them you're done, or did you?
Yeah, it was kind of a slow slide because, at that time we still had the team was operating,
big team.
And so I didn't go out there and make big announcements because I didn't want also to harm the business. Leads were still coming in. People were still calling me. I mean, I still get a random call from, even today from someone who I hadn't spoke to 10 years. They're like, oh, I'm thinking about doing something. I'm like, hey, buddy, like you have, you haven't been paying too much attention, but I'm glad you still have my number. So that was kind of a delicate transition for all those reasons. But, it's really rewarding now. I didn't do this at first. I didn't go back to a lot of the New York relationships, right? In the beginning years of MFP. I didn't go to a lot of the New York relationships then because I wanted MFP to have a bigger track record. And so just in the past, 12, 24 months, I've started to do that. And it's been really rewarding to connect both worlds because,
yep.
Here you have what's happening in New York, obviously 2019, those laws are still in place. And, so I can come in now to a lot of these relationships, which were close. I mean, when you go through a transaction with someone, I mean, you're really in the trenches together.
Yep.
And so now I can come back to some of these relationships and add value in an entirely different way. And they can add a lot of value to me.
Yep.
So, so having those original New York relationships have been great for growing MFP.
What I like what you did is, I think a lot of times in order to really achieve what you want to achieve, you cut something off that was successful, which was your brokerage business, Marcus and Millichap, which would have been the safe play. Just continue to keep that going and keep money coming in as you're slowly building. But you went all in, and I think that's unbelievably invaluable to really kind of achieving what you want to achieve. Throw your back against the wall, build what you want to build, and be honest with yourself about how you want to be spending your time. Because, 15, 16 years in the brokerage business, I know it myself, it's a lot. And if you want to be a principal, a lot of brokers say they want to be a principal. To your point earlier, that's why you took the hiatus. You actually built something. You built a real company with operations. Then you came back to those investors, and it's a completely different ballgame. But
it was really hard.
Yeah.
That was a very hard decision. That was a really, really, really hard thing to go through because I was at a point in my career where I really could, I don't want to say coast, but it was set up. We had, 40, 50 people on the team. We were well known. I could have stayed in that role, and I knew what the path was going to be, and it was a very good path, and it was set up. But so there, it was, personally, professionally, it was very hard to put all that on the line.
Yeah.
And kind of risk it for something different in the future. So, I think, there's this whole perception of entrepreneurs and risk and, how you adapt to risk and how you take advantage of opportunities. And for me, that experience has been more about just there are very specific little moments where you step on the gas and you take these calculated risks.
Yep.
And they're not easy. Like they are not going to feel good. These taking these leaps do not feel good. And you have to remind yourself that they don't feel good. Because if you just think they're going to feel good, you're not going to do them. And you have to remind yourself they do not feel good. They're really painful, and it takes a lot of mental fortitude to go through and do it. But you brought up something that I want to mention, which is, I had that business that was going, and we had, at that time, even when we made the jump, the MFP portfolio started, with over 10 assets in it. And it takes money to operate a principal business. And I've had probably somewhere between 5 and 10, smaller groups come to me over the past 2 years. They've bought 2 assets, 3 assets, 4 assets, and they don't have any money to run their operating business. And they've asked me, hey, how do I do it? Or,
right.
I can't hire the right people because I'm not making enough money. This deal didn't do well, blah, blah, blah. So it's not, starting on the principal side is not just buying a couple deals and kind of hoping that they work out well. If you want to build something sustainable, it takes operating capital.
Yep.
And so all these building blocks of having, having the portfolio, and then also, just having the legacy business and the cash flow and all that kind of stuff. You need that stuff in order to, to start the principal business, or you have to have a really deep pocketed partner, but then, they're going to kind of own your business. So you've got to figure out how to solve these things along the way. And it takes patience.
1,000%. You touched on something that I think is so true, in that anytime you're achieving, you're going through growth, it's a little scary. You're going to want to back out right before you go in. You have an internal voice that's saying, like, don't do this, and you have to push through that. And that's actually how growth happens. And
Yep.
and kudos to you, because it's definitely that's not an easy thing to do.
No, not at all.
And
Yep.
and you push through. So talk to me about the investment strategy you guys have.
So basically, I would say let's say, so about 70% of what we do is multifamily. We do another 30% of what we do is what I would call opportunistic net lease. That I just, if we find stuff through my industry relationships. But in general, we invest in the smaller markets. We buy product that's built post 2000s. And a lot of our strategy, we've benefited from doing some of the smaller markets, because these weren't the places that got oversupplied. Your cap rates are a little bit better. It's why we're located where we are, so we have access to those things. So, as a smaller kind of startup company at the time, you have to figure out where the gaps in the market are and where the opportunities are. And so part of this was by design, and part of it was just where we could find opportunities.
What's a perfect multifamily deal that comes across your desk that you say, all right, let's go try to tie this up ASAP?
A perfect deal. I mean, we all know what perfect, what perfect,
or exciting,
exciting. For me, I like the best things for me. What I get the most excited about when I, am touring a deal or I'm seeing a deal is when I pick up stuff that is not being done by the operational team. So I will spend a lot of time, just trying to figure out what they're missing from an operations standpoint. So just to get in the game, you got to do the underwriting correctly. Everybody can do construction and you can renovate units. I mean, these are all just like the table stakes to be in the business. But where I find a lot of the kind of quiet opportunity is by just seeing what's happening with the staff, how long they've been there, how do they meet, what's their cadence, how are they running their business systems, like actually at the property, how are they marketing themselves, and that gets me really excited, because that's the type of thing that's not going to show up on a broker setup. It's not going to really show up in your underwriting, but it's there. If you go in there and all problems are business, or all business problems are people problems.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you can see little opportunities, in the operations that have to do with the people, those are great ones to solve, because they can, a really well run. I mean, the difference between a well run property and a poorly run property, I mean, it's not 10%, it's 20%, maybe it's 30%, maybe it's even more. So that type of stuff really gets me excited, because I know I'm seeing something that probably others aren't seeing.
Yep. Adding value. So on that note, give me your favorite deal you've ever done. It can be from the brokerage side or the principal side. What's the story behind it? How did it happen? Take me there.
Oh, geez. Okay. Let's see. Well, I won't give the exact location. Okay. I won't give the exact location, because I don't want to put anybody on the spot by telling the story. But this was a property we bought in Alabama. We bought it from the original developer. And, when I walked in and I was sitting down with the property manager, and it's a pretty, it's a smaller market, but very stable, nice property, needed a little TLC. And when I walked in and had a conversation with the property manager, it was very nice. I said, well, what do you do on your weekly calls with management, with your regional or whatever? And she said, oh, we don't have weekly calls. I said, you don't have weekly calls? I said, what do you do on your monthly calls? She said, well, we don't have monthly calls. I said, okay. I said, well, when do you meet with anybody from ownership? She said, well, about twice a year. And I mean, the you can just tell where my questions went from there.
Right.
And I was just like, oh, there's dollars, there's dollars, there's dollars, there's dollars, there's dollars. Right. So that, the deal, that deal is just a slow and steady winner for us.
A lot of meat on the bone.
A lot of meat on the bone. It wasn't, obviously like there are some grand slams and stuff like that. And those are great stories, but like that actual deal, cause that can be repeatable.
Yeah.
That's repeatable. And, and I just like that because it was just sitting right there. And these were easy things to solve, easy opportunities to capitalize on. And, so that's one of my favorites, actually.
That's great.
Yep.
Peter, so you've been incredibly successful both in the brokerage industry and now running a principal business. I like to call it like your 90-mile-an-hour fastball. What's been your 90-mile-an-hour fastball that's kind of been the key to your success, that is kind of uniquely your skill set that you've really focused on, that's allowed you to be as successful as you have?
I would say, for me, this is, I guess if I look back at like my hobbies, like I play music. I played in band in college. Music's a big part of my life, and definitely from some of the feedback from being a brokerage or from my brokerage time, it was, I hear things in conversation. I think I'm a decent listener, and there's what's said in the conversation, and there's what's not said, and there's what someone's really, either leaving out or saying or really meaning. So my partner in brokerage, Joe, and I used to have a funny saying that we
Joey One Cap.
Yeah, we had a funny saying when we'd be going to a meeting, and he'd say, "Hey, we met these people 5 years ago," and I'd say, "Okay, you tell me what their names are, and I'll tell you what they said and what they felt." And that was like our skill set. He could always
good compliment.
He could remember names like this, and I could remember what was like the meat of the meeting or what was really going on with them. So that in brokerage and all these scenarios, like being able to noodle through like what those little distinctions were, can become very important. In the sales side for sure, because you got to pick up little facial cues, and a lot of people will tell you what they're thinking just by the questions they ask.
Yeah.
So
no career is a straight line up, both either from a professional standpoint or a personal standpoint. Walk me through some adversity that you've gone through, either on professionally or personally, and kind of how you've dealt with that, and kind of how that's.
Yeah, well, I think just like we talked about, like making that decision, to when I made the decision to let the New York business go and put full time into MFP, like at that time, that was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life, for sure, because you're just. God, like I said, you had something that was, that was going, and it was a risk. Right now, personally, I'm going through a divorce. It's a very, very difficult, thing to go through. So, I think life is going to continually throw things at you, and you have to figure out, how to adapt, how to think about them. And in business, things can come across that look like opportunities that aren't. And then some are obstacles that are opportunities, and you have to you got to capitalize on them when they happen. Like, I'm reading the most recent Jim Collins book right now, and he keeps saying this phrase over and over again. He's like, not all moments in life are the same. They all don't have the same value. And if I heard that as a younger entrepreneur, I would have like panned that as like, oh, that just sounds like a phrase that sounds good. But I think it's really true there, on a personal side and on the business side, like not all moments have the same value. And there are certain moments where, if you've, thought deeply, or you have like the backup, or you have the industry experience or the relationships, or, even on the personal side, if you've, kind of brought yourself to a moment, then you're prepared. So when that moment hits you, there's a lot of noise, but you have some guideposts to think clearly and, connect with, hey, this is what feels right, or this is where my instincts are taking me, and I'm combining my instincts with what my personal experience has been, what my business experience has been, or whatever. And, you're hopefully, coming up with, your best choices and your best decisions. Nothing is guaranteed in life, but, I think, the whole, challenges, it was like we said earlier about, just the reframing of a recession. Like most people are afraid of recessions,
right.
But everybody in business needs to reframe their entire thinking about recession, unless they're retiring next year.
Right.
If you're not retiring next year, should almost welcome recessions because that's where all the opportunity is. And so it's just, changing your whole mindset about what a challenge is.
You knowing what you know, what advice, and I know you have some kids and your oldest is in college, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. My oldest just freshman year.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're getting old.
Yeah.
If someone in college or a young professional, came to you for advice on how they can build a successful career in real estate or in business, what would be kind of your best advice to them?
Well, God, there's so many ways you can go with this. I mean, the first thing is I think you really want to start to develop your innate understanding of what you're good at or what you tend toward. I just had a family friend of ours, this.
You're 90-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah, what it is. You want to start to know what that is. I just had this experience with a really good family friend of ours. This young guy is just about to enter his senior year. He was looking at an internship for college this year or for the summer this year. And, he was choosing between a role that would be more salesy and then something was like more, investment bank path, a lot more analytical. And we had a series of phone calls, like 2 or 3 phone calls where he started out thinking, okay, I want to do this thing. It's more salesy. It's more flashy. It kind of sounds better on the surface. And by the time we got to the third phone call, he had identified, he's like, wait, that's not really my personality or my skill set. Right. I need to do, I'm more of, something that I'll think about a problem a lot longer and then figure it out correctly. Like that is huge information. I used to have people come in all the time and say, I want to be a broker. And we would talk for 5 minutes. I'm like, you are not a broker. And so if you can try, but you're not going to, you can just tell, you develop that. So you want to start to get a sense of like what you're good at, what you naturally do. And, a way to think about that is like, what would you do if you weren't even getting paid for it? So picking up on that. And then the other thing is just, it's so easy these days. I mean, even we have this, you have this podcast and there's so many others, like just learn every day.
Yep.
I read a ton. I'm a big proponent on reading really anything. I mean, any type of book. I pick up so much, personally from reading.
Yeah.
So, you just keep going. And then obviously I say to my sons all the time, you need a combination of the 3. It's what you know, what you do, and who you know.
Yeah.
And it's not any one of them. It's got to be all 3 of them.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think it's that. And then you also, do what we were saying earlier, you got to put yourself in the place. You have to know what you do well. You have to learn voraciously, however you can. And with AI, it's so easy now to find out anything you want to know about and become, conversational. And then also put yourself in the place where that opportunity can come true. So for your case, both of our cases, New York,
right?
For other industries, it's other places, but put yourself, at all costs in a place where, opportunity opportunities come up.
Yeah. Get in proximity.
Well, this has been awesome.
Thanks, Sam.
Peter, this is great to catch up and awesome to see what you're doing down in Florida and across the Southeast, and look forward to hearing more about you soon.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you.